So I guess this is a sort of a weird experience for you coming into game development pretty late on. What was your first impressions when you came to Cryptic and really tried the game for the first time?
It's actually kind of funny. When after we'd closed Flagship and I was looking at the next thing I was going to do in the industry, I actually just contacted Cryptic through a friend of mine and talked with Randy, who's the lead designer on the project, and said, yeah, I want to get in the beta. I love Champions. I played the pen and paper game, and I really want to check it out. And he said, well, we really can't let anybody in the industry play. I said, well, actually, I'm not working for anybody right now. And they're like, oh, really? Well, maybe you should come in and we should talk with you. So it was actually pretty cool. I was looking at a few different job opportunities, but this one happened kind of organically, and it was actually centered around the fact that I just wanted to get in and play the game.
Is there anything specific that you would say that you brought to the project with your experience?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it has just been looking at what's worked in the past and what hasn't worked in the past and how that applies to Champions Online. Everything from approaches to business models to game design decisions to interface ideas and suggestions to gameplay mechanics. It's really been interesting to come in, and this is really the first time I haven't been at a company since near the beginning. Blizzard, I was like the 17th employee there, and I founded Flagship. And so coming into an established company that's already released products, with really good success, and on a team where, they've been together for a long time, was really different. But I think that one thing that helped is I brought a very different perspective to things, just because of the different products I've worked on and the different experiences I've had.
What would you say is like, because MMO experience is unique, and in what ways will the player be able to shape their own experience in Champions Online?
Actually, I think that is a huge thing that's important with where MMOs are going, is that concept of players shaping how their experience happens. One of the big things we have is we call the Nemesis system, where players can actually go through, create their own arch enemy that they fight in the late part of the game. They use the same character creation system they use to build their hero. So they're not only designing what he looks like, but they choose what power sets he has, his motivations, what his minions are, what they have for powers, and then it goes into its own whole separate storyline, where the player goes through and is constantly facing and trying to defeat his nemesis until he can eventually throw him into Stronghold, which is the big supervillain prison. I think that's a really big component, is finding ways that within the massive sandbox that is an MMO to have players do their own content. So having that user-generated content and being able to share that with other players. That's one of the things that gets the most fun about Nemesis, is not only am I making my enemy that I'm fighting, but then I can have people help me on the missions and go through, and now I'm kind of showing off like, yeah, check out that awesome villain that I made, and you're fighting him, and oh, he looks awesome, oh, it's a really cool power set, things like that. So I get that chance to kind of share my creativity as a player. And I think that's really important in Champions Online, because the superhero genre, so much of it is about what your character looks like, what his powers are, how he travels and things, and it's all kind of a big package. And when I can apply that not only to how I look and when I'm flying around or running around the world, but to how this component that I fight against, making like my own big endgame boss, and then sharing that with other players, I think is a way that we're going to see a lot of MMOs starting to go, trying to figure out how they do that to allow players to share their creativity with each other.
Is there a main story on top of that, or is that the sort of the main story chunk for the player?
Oh, that's just one small component, really. There's actually 6 kind of major world story arcs that happen, and you get introduced to them even right at the very beginning of the game in the tutorial area. But then you go through. There's over 900 missions in the game. And a lot of them tie into the storylines, the big overarching ones that take you all over the world. There's also a whole category of perks, which are kind of our achievements, that you go through that are all lore and knowledge based. So as you go through and figure out things about the storylines and about different elements of the world and everything, you gain these little advantages and perks and titles and capes and all kinds of cool things that you get specifically through the perk system. So story is a huge deal to, I think, not just MMO players, but to comic fans specifically. And so we try to really layer in a lot of really strong story elements. In fact, John Layman's our writer for the game, and he's a comic writer. He has a new comic that's coming out called Chew, which is like his new one he's got releasing. So he's active in the industry. So to have somebody that has that background and can write like that, who writes like a comic fan is used to reading, and do all the missions and the interaction text, and even what citizens say when they're walking around the streets. I mean, every element is really fantastic. So I think it's just another way where we bring that 4-color comic experience to the player.